Can I now invite Kunal Jain, who is chairman of Kaushalam Foundation in India.
I'm honored and grateful, and I come from the Sunshine State, Florida, which is in the United States of America. And we do see sunshine every day, all year, not just film shootings, Dr. Netting. But it's been a wonderful time we have spent last night and this morning. Thank you very much for inviting me. I represent India as my birth country, and for the last 15 years I've been living in the United States of America. My core area or professional field is healthcare. And of course, education is my passion, not just because I have been educated very well, but I have been nurtured and groomed in an environment where education came through the practice rather than learning through the books. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to make a case today that for me, what I have seen in my life, and I have seen it through my father's work, especially in the field of education, is all through learning, through practicing the right thing at the right time. And I would give you some examples how I have seen this and how it impacted my life. I 100% agree with Minister of Higher Education. I was hearing your talk this morning, and Dr. Zimandi, I was very impressed by the point which you mentioned. It is absolutely true for the developing countries, especially the students which comes out of the developing countries. And I think if the High Commissioner of India would be here, he would address that the kind of revenue a developed country get from the immigrant students is even much higher than the revenue which goes out from that country to those developing countries. And it is absolutely fact, no matter what country it is, it's not just specific to India or America or India or United States, but even from the other countries. So it is absolutely, the education is becoming a revenue generating mechanism for those developed countries. And that's one of the reasons we started our foundation in India, because we wanted to empower education system as a social enterprise rather than a means of generating revenue for profit-making business. I have recently graduated from University of South Florida, which is in Florida, and after a gap of 18 years of my previous education, which was done in India. And a lot of people says that what was the reason you had to take that education after 18 years? And I said, well, after 18 years, that's the first education and first degree in my life, because whatever I learned through the books in India, probably I haven't used it in the last 18 years. But after this education, probably I'm going to use some of the education which I have learned recently. So the difference in education from the developing countries and in the developed country, yes, it is a huge gap, and it's a huge difference, and I'm going to make some points which will make you understand why I'm doing so. I also went ahead and took a small course in Harvard for an executive program, and because I was not a very good student in India, so probably I had to wait for some years. When you are not a good student, you don't get admission in master's degree. And I don't understand the relation between both the things, but this is how it is. So I decided to take a Harvard degree, and of course I had to pay a lot for that degree. So I thought it might be my, it's a debt which I can return back to the country, which has given me so much in the last 13 years. And anyway, these executive programs are run just to support their full-time programs, so that they can distribute their free scholarship and they can support their education. So I do have some experience in the education field just by getting the education from these two institutes in the United States of America, and also getting some education in India. But my learning in education and the grooming is very different than traditional people or the traditional students in India. My father was a social entrepreneur all his life. he never did a job. I have seen him working for an organization which groomed him in a way that the priority and the foremost important thing in their life was nation first. And that was the feeling from the day one I saw under his guidance all his life. All the projects they do, the back of the mind, the feeling or the mission of their life or goal of their life was that it's nation first and it has to be for the people. You cannot put a prize for a social cause, or you cannot make social cause for a profit-making mechanism for individuals. And I completely agree with you. It has to be a human touch. It cannot be something which you create into a system and it keeps generating revenue for individuals. And that is what exactly the state of education in developing countries. And it is not, it is really a painful thing. When I see my MBA, which I did 20 years ago in India, and I see the MBA which I did recently, yes, there was no reason for me to do MBA again when I did it one time. And I paid probably more price in India for the same MBA which I recently did. And see the difference of 20 years. Why did I have to do it? If you know the history of India after a British colonization 70 years ago, the worst thing which happened in India is India lost the original language, the constraint India, the originality of the India education. And I'll give you an example why it happened. I was probably, I don't know if you know it or not, but India got independence in 1947 after British colonization. And the whole dynamics of India's education was changed. And most people in last 60 years, probably in the last 5 years, the things have changed, but people have grown up and all they hear in their childhood, you can only become either an engineer or a doctor. And if you are not an engineer or doctor, there is nothing else left in your life. And that's all we heard. All of our lives, that's all we heard. Either you can become, you have two choices. You become an engineer or a doctor. The rest of the people who could not become engineers or doctors, either they become accountants, they become clerks, they're working for the government, or they're working for themselves doing small businesses. What about entrepreneurs? Nobody ever thought about that. And that is the key of success. If you see all developed countries, that's all they did. They empowered entrepreneurship. They nurtured entrepreneurship from the very, very elementary level. And it comes with creativity, it comes with innovation, it comes with a lot of things. But now think about entrepreneurship. How many people were talking about entrepreneurship 10 years ago or 20 years ago in those developing countries? I have never heard of entrepreneurship when I was, growing up in India. All I heard, it's all engineering, and that's probably the answer of some of the problems, what you're talking about. How you can help developing countries by connecting, having a dialogue with the mentorship programs. And the mentorship comes from the mindset which thinks about creating more enterprises in those countries. When you start thinking about creating these enterprises, that's how I see the world. So entrepreneurship, and especially in entrepreneurship, if you think from the social entrepreneurship perspective, I'll give you another example. If you have heard about Muhammad Yunus, how many of people, he is a Nobel Prize winner. People from Bangladesh here? Heard about him. He changed the complete dynamics, economics of Bangladesh. He got a Nobel Prize for that, banker of the poor, introducing microeconomy, microfinancing. And his thought process is, he says, all of these corporations, they put 5%, it's called corporate social responsibility. They give 5% money to the charity, and they think they have done the 100% work. It is not right. It is just the 5% work. The actual entrepreneurship is if you have a corporation who is doing 100%, taking 100% social responsibility and running that corporation as a social enterprise. And that is what needed in today's world, not just that the 5% thing where you just give your liability of 5% because you think in back of in your mind that that's a charity you are doing. Now think about the corporations who are making billions and billions of dollars. Now I'll give you some examples. There's a corporation, have you heard about 5 Hour Energy? How many of it's a $4 billion company in United States of America. All they do is they make a small caffeine bottle. And for the last 6 years, they have been selling it. It's a $4 billion company. It's started by an Indian guy named Manoj Bhargav. They are putting 90% of their profits, and they make 90% margin on their product. They make 90% of their profit in creating these kind of social enterprises. I mean, their main work is in India, but they are supporting innovation. And they're supporting innovation in a big way. All they do is, if you have an idea, if you know how to execute it, they're going to support it. So the corporations has to come forward and use that platform to create more and more social enterprises in developing countries, not only in developed countries. That's the only answer for the problem with Minister you have explained to me. And I'm a firm believer that unless that happens, this is not going to solve any problem. 5% money does not solve the 100% problem, the 95% problem. Companies like Future Learn, it's a great product. If you have heard about Salman Khan, Cell Academy, Khan Academy has done it, and it's a 100% not-for-profit organization. Now, think about their reach in the last 6 years. You can absolutely think about your reach in the same way if it goes with the same mission. So that is the answer for solving most problems, whether it comes to the education or a health, that unless you reach to the masses. Now, once you reach to the masses, you can sell anything which basically supports humanity and helps humanity, and that's what the key for the social entrepreneurship. So coming back to our foundation, I don't know if I can take this to the next. Okay, so here's my father. This is what he did all his life. He did 4 projects. One of the projects was about starting a university in the remotest village in India. All of his social entrepreneurship projects was not just the leadership, but he was an action hero. This is one of the senior citizen sub-center which he led and inspired recently in the late of his life. This is the university which he did in his life, where all of that money came from the public. We lived in a 250 square feet of our house is like 450 square feet of house in India. My mom still lives there, 1-bedroom house. He never bought any property for himself. These social enterprises, whether it's a school, you're running a hospital, you are running events organization, or anything what you do for the people, but it has to be supported by those people. So this is one of the core area in India. What we are planning to do is we are planning to empower these social enterprises by doing the capacity building. And we are focusing, like one of the villages we recently adopted, it's called Bhapura, it's a village near Jaipur. This village, we are teaching not only language, but we are also teaching the skill set to the villagers, not to find jobs, but to create jobs. Our main focus is that if this village will get self-sustainable, and if the people from that village, if they can harness, we can help them harnessing their own skill set, where they can start more businesses. And especially with the leadership India is having in the last 3 years, it's very dynamic. We are very positive about it under Mr. Modi. So this leadership is also supporting a lot of startup programs, accelerator programs. So under that leadership, government has started giving grants for those kind of programs. So of course that benefits, that's one of the pillars for making the organization self-sustainable. But so one of those programs we have is basically we are providing the access of capital, not only to start your own enterprise, but we are also giving them the tools and the techniques where they learn how to make them self-sustainable. So our vision is basically to create a holistic ecosystem for building India through skilling India. One of the things I have done is we have a 25,000 square feet of building which I have completely modeled to create an incubation center in Jaipur, where we can actually have about 1,000 people can have their own workstations, and they can start their own idea, they can start they can incubate their own ideas, and we can help them in starting their own businesses. We can connect them, we can mentor them, we can provide some of the resources which international universities provide. Platforms like this opens up the dialogues. I meet people like in these kind of gatherings where share your idea, we can connect to the resources, provide the mentoring. And that's exactly going to help with this kind of center. One of the things I do in networking in the United States of America is called TIE, T-I-E. It is a group of entrepreneurs. The full form is the Indus Entrepreneurs. It's a 20-year-old organization. I started their Florida chapter about 4 years ago. We are a group of 20,000 people. We are a group of 20,000 entrepreneurs all over the world, and we are very highly globally connected network. Please feel free to stop me.
Yes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So go to the website called tie.org whenever you get a chance, and you will see a lot of resources over there. That's exactly the kind of resources we are planning to use and utilize to, again, empower the social enterprises. I would not even take 2 minutes. I would just close my this talk, but I hope that we will walk away with some of the things. I think there is a need for the education, that we need to set up some kind of global ecosystem or a global fundamental policies for education. And I think in civilized society, people love people. So set up a system where people keep loving people, not people use people. And I have seen, in many of these initiatives, people start using people. So I think this is all where I would end up. And thank you very much. God bless all of us.